And then people, I think, will get that desire for it, because a lot of people aren't open to reason, but they are open to an example. And I think people learn empirically that way, and I think that's how we communicate most.
I agree. That's why the COINTELPRO and government operatives try to tear down anybody who's positive and talks about how we can win together. They want all this infighting and dissension and negativity, when really we have incredible power when we use it, and the parasites know that.
Yes, and we, of course, outnumber them vastly, and all we have to fundamentally do is say no to free them from this 10,000-year-old ridiculous pyramid that we should have outgrown when we threw out leeches for dealing with illness.
Well, you're absolutely right, and I think back to the vampire analogy. Vampires have to have helpers. Count Dracula has Renfield, and that's what the welfare class is. They are this quasi-undead, self-propelled stomachs eating at McDonald's, and I'm not saying I'm perfect either, folks. The point is, I can recognize it. I can recognize what's wrong in me and what's good in me, and we've got to reach out to the Renfields and try to somehow, get them to realize the trance they're in. Stefan, stay there. I want to come back, take some phone calls with you, and obviously we're going to have you back in the near future as well, and we'll give out your website. And this is the end of this current age of tyranny. The globalists believe it's the birth of an even more intense technocratic technocracy, in the words of Zbigniew Brzezinski, Newt Gingrich, David Rockefeller, and many others. So we'd better hope that everybody out there gets involved in this fight. It doesn't mean we're all going to totally agree with each other, but we know government's too big, the elites are out of control, we're having too much sucked off of us. It's time to stand up and say no. There's been a huge development on the Google censorship front, but I'm not going to get to it till our guest leaves us at about 45 after. Huge development. But I'm just going to say this. Google has backed down. I've never seen anything like this before. But again, it shows the power that you have out there, but I'll go over it coming up. Just amazing information. Now, we got a bunch of callers here for Stefan, and this only happens about once a year, but the phone system then shut down at Genesis. It's having a few problems, but 5 phone calls got through, but that'll be it because the system shut down. We've got our own phone system here. This happens maybe once a year, but hopefully these calls will work. If not, we'll give them our number here. Kevin in Canada, you're on the air with our guest, and you're welcome to talk about anything you want. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex, thanks so much for accepting my call. I'm a first-time caller. You've talked a lot about the economic state in the United States and what you see happening for the United States. You and Gerald Celente and many others have said you see a terror attack happening, you see the banks shutting down, and the American people being blamed for it. My question is, do you see a similar circumstance happening for Canada? For instance, do you see the banks shutting down? Do you see there being a terror attack? And if you do see this happening for Canada, do you see this happening this year or the next year?
Okay, well, an attack on England, an attack on France, an attack on Japan, it's used globally to take everybody's liberties. Even the governments that aren't aligned with each other use 9/11 to crack down on their population. Stefan, you take that question.
Yeah, and it's a great question. There are several indicators in the Canadian economy that are even worse than the American economy. Our housing bubble is larger than the American housing bubble was when it burst. Per capita debt is huge in Canada. One of the major differences between Canada and the United States, of course, is that Canada, relative to the U.S., has almost no military industrial complex. One of the huge challenges of dismantling a sort of violent empire, an imperialistic empire, which America is to a large degree and Canada is almost not, is that you have all of these troops, you have all of this weaponry, you have all of these people who've been trained to take orders and to point their guns at people that some guy in a green hat tells them to. So dismantling that is huge. One of the reasons that England, I believe, developed such socialist leanings after the Second World War, I mean, what a crazy tragedy to spend your youth and your blood fighting National Socialism and then to impose socialism at the end of the Second World War. Well, the problem is that you have an enormous number of people who are not very fit to work in the free market. They have been working for the government, either directly or indirectly. They have been receiving...
Yeah, it's created a bunch of lazy, dumbed-down people who think it's a moral responsibility to be intellectually lazy. What do you call that phenomenon, Stefan, where people actually revel in being slobs, revel in not caring about life? They're only alive one time, and they think anybody that talks about how magic life is a joke.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, to me, that was most of my peers in graduate school. I don't know what to call it technically. So Canada's not going to have to worry about dismantling the empire. The U.S. is going to have to worry about dismantling the empire and what to do with the hundreds of thousands of mentally scarred troops who have substance abuse problems. These people got to go somewhere, and they're going to come home, and they're going to be a huge problem to manage.
Absolutely.
Canada,
Let's go to another caller. I basically agree with what Stefan was saying there, Kevin. Good question. Catherine in New York, you're on the air.
Hello?
Hey, welcome.
Oh, thank God you can hear me. Okay, I'm going to try really hard to contain my excitement because I'm just so glad that you guys are talking about stuff that I've been saying pretty much my whole entire life. And I guess my question or my dilemma actually, because again you guys were just saying it about Stefan just mentioned about horizontal relationships. I mean, again, that's pretty much where I feel pretty trapped, I guess you could say, is because I didn't grow up in a family. I literally felt, I've known this stuff my whole life, and that my own family basically was they kind of really pinned against one another. And all I've tried to do
we've been trained by the social engineers, men against women, women against men, black against white, Catholic against Protestant, Muslim against Jew, Jew against Muslim. And again, they use that to compartmentalize. Stay there, Catherine. We're going to come back and get Stefan's take on what you were saying. Then I've got the big Google news in our fight with those guys trying to censor us. We've had a victory on one front, not on the other front yet. Google search term, Google evil. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Catherine, crystallizing, boiling down what you're saying or what your question or statement is. I mean, just elaborate briefly on what you were trying to say.
It's basically about the horizontal relationships. And I mean, in a nutshell, there isn't anyone to have a horizontal relationship with because, I feel everybody's been so brainwashed to keep everyone else in line. And every time I try to wake them up, they're injecting me verbally with something to put me back to sleep.
No, I know. A lot of times if you're nice to somebody under you, they'll subconsciously think you're weak and then try to dominate you. I learned this growing up, not that I'm some perfect person. I mean, after somebody attacks me, then I become very vicious, very sneaky, very aggressive. But I was never envious of wealth and power and beauty. I always admired it. But so many of the, quote, underclass, they just hate anyone who has a penny more than them, and they hate and disdain those under them that have a penny less. And it's like their worth is some type of false template or hologram in their mind of kind of like baseball cards they've collected, instead of just being in awe of the magic of consciousness and the human experience on this incredible planet hurtling through deep space. But I hear what you're saying, Catherine. It's very, very frustrating. Humans are hierarchical at their base because we were meant to admire the strongest, the most loving, the most dynamic, those with the most charisma in our tribes, but we were in small enough groups that empowered the whole group to emulate the strong and to honor the pure. If you go back to really ancient societies, then as they became bigger, the parasite con artist class comes in, whether it's the Aztecs, the Babylonians, the ancient Visigoths. Every culture does the same thing. Stefan, what's your view on that?
Yeah, I agree. If people can't see you, you just have to get bigger. You have to get bigger and bigger until people can see you. I'm the kind of guy who I want to take on the biggest Goliath, because the greater the enemy, the greater the pride of victory, and we are going to win. But people can't see you over the shadow of Goliath. So you just have to put on your heels, make a podcast, make a blog, write a book, call into shows until people can see you. And then I think that they will join you. And I think we should all be proud of taking on the greatest and oldest tyranny in the face of the world, because there's going to be much honor when we win. And the fact that it looks sometimes hopeless, the fact that we look so small relative to the Goliath that we're fighting, just makes our courage all the greater. And I hope that helps.
Exactly. Here's a relationship example, and this has been well documented in psychological studies and just in common sense. some of the easiest women, say you're 20 years old in college or working, some of the easiest women to pick up for a date are the most beautiful bombshells. And that's because most people are intimidated by them, A, but B, people are mean to good-looking people. People, I mean, I'm not super great looking now because I'm like 30 pounds overweight and getting to be middle-aged. But when I was, 15, 20, 25, I mean, I was super good looking. And I always wondered why, and as I got older, I understood it, why normally people that would see themselves as ugly hated me so much. It was because I was seen as archetypally good looking. And but the same thing is for, why do you see so many guys who aren't really super handsome with beautiful women? Well, they've got a good personality. They've got other things that are beautiful. And they're also learn the secret that the better looking the woman, the easier they are to pick up for a date. I mean, I'm not, Stefan, do you see where I'm going with this? That none of it, we're not confident in ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that we're looking at history, not at the future. We need to shoot. It's like a grappling hook, you see in those spy movies. They shoot this grappling hook up to the top of the parapet, and then they pull themselves up. We don't need to look back at everything that's been lost. We don't need to look back at all the disasters that have occurred. We don't even look into the near future where this transition is going to occur. We need to shoot our hopes like a huge grappling hook and climb up to a future that may be a generation away, but we can still get there. If you focus on the immediate, you will lose heart, because they have the aircraft carriers, they have the nuclear weapons, they have the prisons, they have the currency. But if you shoot your hopes over the present into the future, that gives you propulsion, and that allows you to spread hope to others.
Yeah, we've got to lead. We've got to lead, and the Pentagon admits now 90% of their operations are info war. There is a war on for your mind. They know that if they can't dominate your mind, they've lost. It doesn't matter what weapon systems they have.
The state is an effect of a delusion called the inconsequence of the citizens. And as soon as we drop that loss of confidence, as soon as we drop that inconsequentiality, the state shrinks to nothing in our minds.
Stefan, do you agree with me, and I foresaw this almost 5 weeks ago, that the TSA is bigger than just saying no to them dominating us and putting their hands down their pants? The social engineers know this is about the next level of tyranny, being searched in our homes, our roads, the shopping malls, our offices. And they know that our resistance to this is a symbol of us getting our will back and our strength and standing up to them. And that if we stand up to them on this and have victory, we'll stand up on everything and have victory. And that's why they're so scared.
Everything that the state does, every expansion of state power is a trial balloon. And if we shoot it down, they withdraw and they go someplace else. And so, yeah, I think the containment, I think that recognizing that the TSA, it was inevitable that they were going to end up groping people and body scanning, because that's what the government does. They take a reasonable idea like security and turn it into a tyranny every single time. So, yeah, every expansion of state power is a trial balloon to see what people will accept.
Absolutely. Let's talk to Sean in Ohio. You're on the air with our guest. Go ahead.
Hey, what's up?
Worldwide transmission. What's on your mind?
Just the Google thing. Which part were you going to say they let down? The news search?
I'm going to get to it after Stefan is gone. If you want me to put you on hold, I'll come back to you when I get to it. But I've got to spend some time on this to explain it, or people will misunderstand it if I don't, communicate it. Maybe because I'm not a good communicator. But the point is that I'm going to get to that in a few minutes. Do you have any questions for our guest?
If you want to put me back on hold, go ahead.
All right, I'll do it. I'll put you on hold. Michael in Texas, you're on the air.
Yes, good afternoon, gentlemen. Hey, Alex, by the way, I've been trying to get in touch with you. I'm a writer, and I want to volunteer. I don't want a job. Like weeks ago, you said you needed more writers for the, and I don't want you to pay me. I want to volunteer. So
well, we have a lot of folks that get their columns posted at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com, so send in some sample pieces to writers@Infowars.com.
Yeah, I don't even want my name on it. I just want to help. So
well, it'll be fine if you want your name on it, or if you send us good stuff, you can have a link at the bottom to your website. That we like to promote other liberty people. So anybody that wants us to post their columns, if it's online with basically the liberty movement exposing the globalist, and if I read over it, it looks like it's well researched and factual, we'll start carrying your work. But anything for our guest.